Thank you. Uh, Today's talk is really, I'm not sure what the final title is going to be, but it's really the hero's journey is the journey of the soul. We're trying to understand the soul in terms of the hero archetype. And the music we had on was from the Lord of the Rings, which is a great hero epic, 500,000 words. I don't know what the running time is on the movies, but it's half a day if you watch them all in sequence. Tolkien's masterpiece on the hero. Yeah. I thought what we'd do. Just getting the mechanics worked out here. Excuse me. Thought what we'd do today is. Because the hero's journey really goes in three parts, like so many things in spirituality in three parts. I want to sort of give you a visual of the hero's journey and the journey of a soul, and then talk about two great heroes, just to give you a way to sort of uh, see it in terms of two people who actually have lived into this. So, but first, I want to go back to the screensaver. Some of you just coming in might not have seen it at all, because that's going to be the visual for the journey. This is, here we go. This is just to my left here in Loose Leaf Hollow. It's like I've got 4 or 5 altars, the main altar, and this is a separate altar here, and you can sort of trace the hero's journey. I mean, classically, when you hear Joseph Campbell talk about it, who really understands it, he says, there's 3 parts. For some reason, you leave home. And that home, in the Middle Ages was the town or the village or whatever. You leave home, sometimes not intending a quest, but something, maybe in Celtic myth, a lot of times you're following a deer and just a hunt, and then all of a sudden you're led into the second part, which is you're led into the dark wood, unfamiliar part of the forest, totally unfamiliar part of the forest, where something's going to happen. You're going to have an initiation experience. So it's the leaving, the separation, and then the initiation. For instance, this journey started for me years ago, over 50 years ago, when I was teaching in the high school in Houston, and I was just so stressed out. I just thought, well, maybe meditation would help, which it certainly did. But I wasn't intending on all of this, and I'm glad, so sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes you intentionally set out, leave the known for the unknown and some experience. And then the third part is after you've had the experience, and in the medieval setup, at least the Western European medieval setup, you would meet a dragon or some beast. A lot of times it was a dragon sitting on a pile of gold, just like if you think of Smaug and the Hobbit. You have classic dragon sitting on a pile of gold, and then how do you get to the gold? How do you get past the dragon or slay the dragon? But the idea is there's something to be found there, and it's always imitate. It's in some form diamonds, rubies, gold, and so how do you get to gold? And then the third part is you return back home to the village, to the town, and share the wealth. You bring that back. Everybody's changed. That's part of the hero's journey, is that it's bigger than you. I mean, if you just stayed there and then just went, just hung around the gold, you'd be like the dragon. So it's not, the hero's journey is always, and the soul's journey is for something bigger than yourself. And so the third part, you come back to home, but now you're changed and you enrich the lives of everybody else. Now, in the screensaver, you can see the hero's journey. I don't know if my thing appears on the screen, but if you start on the left with the famous scream poem. These pillows, most stuff in here, more than 50% of the stuff on Loose Leaf Hollow, if you've ever been here, people just give me stuff. They say, well, that you might use this. Well, two different people gave me these two pillows. And this journey, the hero's journey, is like an arc from the scream through the central picture there, which is the picture of a meditation, an icon of meditation, over to the Mona Lisa. So how do you get from the scream to the Mona Lisa? That's a lot of the hero's journey, at least on a horizontal level. You know, the scream is just a totally compulsive part of everybody's personality. It can, it doesn't matter where you are on the Enneagram. If you're compulsive, it looks like the scream. It's tight, it's lonely, and it's not pleasant. Okay, you can get all that from the picture. And how do you get from that to the most famous work of art in the world? Because she captures the end point of the hero's journey. The end point of the soul's journey is captured in Mona Lisa. She's not stressed. She is. This is so the scream is kind of frozen state, which compulsion is. You know, we're frozen into our. Susan Packard said the last Heart to Heart. There's armoring that we have to get. You know, growing up, that'll take us through our lives at home and our early lives in school and the culture. We get like a suit of armor. That's the childhood operating system, which serves its function but should be jettisoned by the time you start to actually be taught how to read, write, use the rational mind, strategic mind. So, moving into the strategic operating system, the armor is sort of clunky, it sort of holds you back. And then finally, the whole arc goes through these three operating systems. Again, three: childhood operating system, strategic operating system, and then the operating system of the heart. See, what you're looking at in the scream is the operating system of the mind, compulsive. You know, when you're not compulsive, you're contemplative. The mind is a beautiful thing. You're not trying to get rid of the mind. Or we're not trying to get rid of the instincts of the childhood operating systems. Instincts can save your life. So we have the instinctual body operating system. We have the strategic operating system of the mind, which is much more refined and much more powerful. But in its compulsive sense, by the time we're educated in school, I remember I was just a head on a stick. I didn't have a body, and I didn't have, well, the body and heart were there, but they were I was located in the mind by the time I got out of grad school. That's who I think, therefore I am. That's who we thought, that's what I thought I was. And the body was just very pale, and the heart, well, would come through every once in a while because the heart's strong, but I wasn't living there. I was living in the mind. And it was pretty rigid, like the picture of the scream, and not really that pleasant. So the hero's journey is to really develop these three operating systems in a healthy way. I mean, you want the instincts of the body, but you don't want all the armoring that took place to protect yourself. You want the reason, you want the scientific method of the strategic operating system, but that's not the be-all, end-all. And then there's the heart. The heart is what you're seeing in Mona Lisa, presence. You see a terrific presence. She's almost in the pose of meditation there, which is what gets you there. That's why the icon of meditation is right in the middle, you see. Because how do you turn a compulsive person into a contemplative person who's at ease in their own body? And not just in their own body, at ease with all the parts of themselves. See, if any part of ourself doesn't belong, then none of us belongs. And there are all those parts of ourselves that we shaved off in early childhood, and when we got hurt, trauma, and whatever, we move all those parts down into the unconscious, get them out of view. We didn't even know we did it, because that's what early childhood is like. But we have to bring all those orphan parts of ourselves back and embrace them really with a kind of radical compassion, self-compassion. It's about reintegrating all these lost parts. We have this feeling like something's missing. Well, those are those are aspects of ourself that had to be sliced off, had to be orphaned, had to be exiled. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to survive in our family, in this culture. You see the pain of people with different sexual identities here, other than Adam and Eve, man or woman, and just the pain of that, and the conflict of when people are coming out and they're saying, "No, this is who I am." They recover that, and then they live it in our culture. Not easy, but it's heroic. These people who are really finding out who they are. That's just one level, just a sexual level, but it's important to re-embrace that. And then the amount of suffering that takes. There's always suffering along the hero's journey, the journey of the soul. Notice the basic shape of this screensaver. There's a vertical shape coming from meditation, even the top of the meditation icon down to the center, but you keep going to the light, you keep going to the preciousness of the diamond. And then ultimately we have a little hacky sack there of the earth. And so that's, and if you go back the other way from the earth all the way to the heavens, so that's a kind of vertical dimension of the journey. And the horizontal dimension is from compulsion to contemplation. So you have the cross, which is an image of integration. That's what the heart operating system does. It's not instinct, it's not thinking, it's pure awareness. It's in the present. All thinking usually is in the past or the future, but the heart is in the present. It's aware, and it's working. It sees the integration of everything. It sees the connection of everything, and it sees those parts too that have been disconnected and need to be reunited. You see, it's a beautiful icon. The screensaver is a beautiful icon of the whole journey. The cross also means, you will suffer if you try to be yourself in a world that picks and chooses who can be included. Women, not included, all over the world, not at the head of the table, not at the table in some societies. People who aren't white, you name it. There's all those things, and it's a suffering. And so the archetypal hero, or the archetypal hero is Jesus. That's the meaning of the cross. The thing doesn't end at the cross, but you do suffer consciously to become who you're meant to be. Christ is a bigger version. Christ is not the same as pre-crucifixion Jesus at all. He was great, but something else comes from walking this path, you see. So that's sort of just a big picture look at it, and that's why I like that icon so much. I'm going to come back and drop that off now. If I can find the mechanics. All right, now we're all back in presence. Now the oldest hero that we have in the West and in English, which we all speak more or less, is Beowulf. Is a very early in the way it came down to us in Old English, not even Middle English like Chaucer or something. This was Old English, and I want to just revisit this archetypal Western hero. He's the first Western. This was the first Western. Before Clint Eastwood and all those guys, this was the first Western. And so I'm going to just sort of give you a kind of overview of this. I had just somebody in the group here said, "Yeah, I read Beowulf in school, but I don't remember anything about it." Well, that's so much for school, That's your. So here's the gist of it. It takes place in Denmark, and there's a monster, a Grendel, is ravaging the Shire here, or the community, the kingdom. just coming to eating people, taking stuff, and it's just bad news. I mean, right now a correlative might be the climate. If you've ever been to Maui, it just hurts your heart to see how it was just ravaged. Well, this Grendel was doing this in the community, and so just like the old westerns, they put out a reward for any kind of hired sword that would come in and face this guy. They didn't have guns at the time, but it's just you see this in almost every western. If you grew up watching westerns, there's somebody who's terrorizing the town, and then this hired gun comes in. Well, in this case, it was Beowulf. He came in, and from he's an outsider, so everybody wasn't so sure about him, but he came in, has this epic fight with Grendel. This is really simplified. There's a lot more to the book, but I'm just giving you for our purposes. Slays the monster. Okay, classic part of the hero's journey. Slays the monster. Everybody is relieved, and they're all they have all this chest of Dane gold, golden Danish coins. He gets his reward, so the gold is there. The dragon is there, and so they're in the bar drinking mead, and everybody is very happy, and everybody's getting a little wasted, and so everything is ha ha ha, and how we're all out of the fire now. And well, then this kind of Yoda figure wanders into the bar, and he says, "Well, who's the guy who slayed Grendel?" "Well, I am." Beowulf says, he's all full of himself, and he says, "Well," he says, "yeah, that's really something." He said, "But I'm sorry to tell you this, but Grendel's mother is still alive. And as long as the mother is alive, she can have another Grendel. So we're really not out of the fix." And then he gives this great, he says, "I'll tell you where she is." And then he gives this great, description of this. She lives in a lake, and it's this cold, forbidding lake with these vapors, and all these twisty vines are coming out, and a foul smell. And then if you look into the lake, you can see this lights of 3 torches at the very bottom of the lake. She lives at the bottom of the lake. And he says, a wild stag chased through the woods by dogs and hunters will hit the brakes on the edge of this creepy lake and would rather be ripped apart by dogs than jump in the lake. He says, it's that kind of place. Is that bad? And then he said, it's not far from here, nor is it a pleasant place. And so then, Beowulf, to get the gold, he's got to go kill, because, it's the same way when you mow your lawn. When dandelions come out, you mow the lawn, and then 2 weeks later, they're back. You didn't get to the root of the problem, you see. So Beowulf, it sobers up. It's sobering. I hadn't done anything yet. Just killed just knocked off the top of the dandelion. So he goes to the lake. And I love where he says it's not far from here, nor is it a pleasant place. And that cuts both ways. It wasn't really far from there in the story, but he's talking about our own unconscious. You see, for depth psychologists like Freud and Jung, water was a symbol of the unconscious. This is dark water. See, and so he's got to go into his own unconscious, into his own hurt locker. We all do. Where all the trauma stored, where all the other parts of ourselves that mom didn't like, that the teachers didn't like, that the junior high girls didn't like. It goes on. You shelve parts, and that's where they go. They go into this dark, deep lake that it's not far from here, because it's in you, nor is it a pleasant place. So he gets there, and he's ready to. Well, all right. He sees the torches. He's told that Grendel's mother lives down there. He's ready to, pulls his sword, ready to go, and Yoda says, "Well, no, you can't go in there with sword and armor. You have to just go in there naked, which is another great trope, you know, because you're not killing something. You have to strip down. You have to lose your armor. You'll never beat her if you've got all this clunky armor, and furthermore, the sword can't take it. Which are very interesting images. It's like when you start meditation, all of a sudden when you actually try to sit still, then all these voices come out. When I would go to big meditation retreats in Cincinnati with my Dutch Zen master, 40 people first night, second day, uh, starts dropping down. By the third day, there's 20 left. And those 20 usually stick it out. But there's attrition because, well, when you sit quietly with your eyes half open looking at a blank white wall all day, you see a lot of movies. You hear a lot of voices that you don't, they're always there, but you're doing stuff. So you don't notice them. Well, all of these voices come out. And so, you're trying to fight them. Cuchulainn, the great hero from Ireland, was challenged by somebody, and they said, "All right, if you're the great hero, go fight those waves." And so Cuchulainn pulls out his sword and goes in. And he's fighting the waves, and then he's exhausted, can't beat them. You can't fight this stuff, especially in the way we're journeying through meditation. To meet these parts of ourselves, because in meditation, if you just stop fighting all the parts of yourself that come up during meditation, you just let them be. That's a different thing. In ancient Japan, the samurai were the heroes. These guys with the big swords, and the top knot, and there was the famous samurai from the no sword school. And he got on a crowded ferry boat that was going from one island to the other. And there was another samurai on there who was really, really wasted and drunk on sake. And so he hears that the samurai of the no sword, the leader of the no sword school, is on. And he goes, no sword. He said, where is this guy? And so he gets up on this crowded ferry boat and pulling his sword. And he said, well, show me your no sword. He said, and so the other samurai says, well, wait a minute. He says, there's all these people here. We wade in and have battle. We're going to hurt some people. And so he told the guy who was poling the ferry, he says, pull us over to this little island here, and then I'll show you my no sword. So the drunk samurai is growling and, yeah, you chicken, and all this stuff. Well, so they get close to the thing, and they start to get towards the shore, and he jumps out, onto the sand and with his sword. All right, show me your no sword. And then the samurai takes the pole and pulls the thing away from the island. And he says, now you have seen my no sword. Yeah. In other words, the violence to ourself, which was done already, is not going to do it. So it was very hard for me to learn because I was committed. I was going to get rid of anger. I was going to get rid of all this stuff that I didn't find acceptable myself. That's the sword school. No sword school it's intelligence, but it's also compassion. Say, self-compassion first of all. Yeah. So Beowulf he has to go in. That's a real challenge. You have to go in, and there were a kind of wrestling match and all that stuff going on. But those are big images. Yeah, part of when you go into this kind of even just when you meditate, when you leave the surface of things, because you can see meditation is going down. I always often use this thing of water, and with the diamond on the bottom, the gold on the bottom, you have to get and so when you do that, you got to leave the armor behind. Any thrashing around just muddies the water. So there's where the stillness and the silence. In the silence, you hear the voices, but you have to have a certain nonviolent relationship to the voices. You see. We'll look at that with our next hero, because those voices, if you listen to them, they stop the journey. You see. So so that's so that's really a big icon. You got to get to the heart of the matter, so you can discipline yourself. You can do a lot of external stuff, makeovers and whatever. But if you haven't gone into the dark lake, the unconscious, and or haven't let the unconscious come up slowly in a meditative journey, it comes up to you little by little, slowly, in a way that you can deal with it, and then you welcome all those things that come up. I mean, I know the guy who's uh, beloved just left him. They're not married, but they were really serious and just left like that. I was on the phone with him yesterday. His heart was broken. I said, "This is the hero's journey." And I said, to keep going now, to not run away. She ran away from the relationship, I think, and to not run away when things come up that you'd rather not see. Things come up in the meditative hero's journey that you didn't even know were there, parts of yourself that you've kept down since childhood. Your sexuality, yeah, you see, and so it's away with the armoring, it's away with the sword, yeah, yeah. That's real heroism. If like Martin Luther King with not the third hero I'm going to talk about, but there's a bunch of them. Gandhi, these guys said you face guys with weapons in unarmed love. Now, that's real heroism there. So this gives you an idea of it, Beowulf. Yeah, you got to get to the root of it. You got to go into the dark lake, or let the dark lake come up to you. Now, the third person is somebody from that we know. Most of us know Mary Oliver. Interesting. It's a great poet, heroic poet, different poet. She had her own style, of course, which makes people heroic and great, and that's the soul. No, there's not one of us that if we actually uh, become who we're meant to be would be like anybody else. Yeah, that's the uniqueness. Yet we're all connected. That's the community part. Yeah, this is a very unique community. We have so many different people who are starting to become themselves in community here. Yeah, but so Mary Oliver, if you just to fill in a little backstory about her childhood, her father was just abusive to her. At least I don't know about her sisters or brothers or whatever, but abused her, and so her self defense was she'd get up before her father got up, and she'd leave house. She'd leave the house with a little, the little notebook and pen, and she'd go out into nature, which she felt much safer at than in her own home. So she left the home. This is the part why you leave doesn't matter, and she went into the unknown world and found her home there. And then she came back and told us all about it. That's one way of looking at the hero's journey is you leave home, you're going into the don't know, the unfamiliar. You're leaving the comfort zone, and then there's an experience. So it's don't know, then there's an experience, and then you tell somebody. Those are the three parts of the journey. Don't know, have an experience, tell somebody. And the way we're setting up our meditations now, where we have writing after it, it's a possibility to tell the first somebody you tell is yourself. What happened? Merton has a great line on it. He says, we make ourselves real by telling the truth. And so that first somebody I'm writing for when I'm on the page after my sitting I'm telling myself the truth. I'm telling myself what happened there. Now, I got a couple poems will be coming out on Monday. Well, what's the point of writing these poems? Well, to become real, but then the greater thing is give them away. Tell somebody else. Maybe it'll help them, So she would do that. She made a whole life of just walking around in nature, paying attention. She's, John Segrest, a couple of weeks ago, he said, She has a little thing, instructions for living, which is really instructions for the hero's journey. And she says, pay attention. She just went out and paid attention in the natural world. Pay attention, be astonished, tell somebody. That was, that was her, that was what she did. That's what she did. So there's a couple of poems that if you know them, it'll be good to hear them again because you'll hear the lineaments of the hero's journey, of the soul's journey. This one is called The Journey. And it goes, one day you knew what you had to do and began. But the voices all around you kept shouting their bad advice. Sorry about that. One day you knew what you had to do. And the voices all around you kept shouting their bad advice. Well, that is the end of the journey sometimes for us. The voices come up and we listen to the voices. One day you began. You finally knew you had to do what you had to do, and you began. While the voices all around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to live the only life you could live. And you can learn a lot just by the structure of that poem. It's 2/3 of the way through the poem before this image of, and as you left their voices behind, which is the voice of the culture, it's the voice of your family, it's the voice of how you're brought up, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds. There's a direction. So 2/3 of the time, you don't know where you're going. That's that don't know thing, that dark wood aspect of the heroic journey. You got to walk a long ways not knowing where you're going. But the image of stars is an image of direction, because that was our original directional thing. That's how the runaway slaves found the north. They followed the star, and then once the stars burn through and she gets a little direction, and then slowly, little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice. How long it takes to hear the voice that's inside, because it's surrounded by all these other stronger voices. How about your voice, where you hear a new voice, which you slowly recognize as your own, that keeps you company as you stride deeper and deeper into the world. Notice she's going back into the world now. That's that third part. Deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do. And she says, determined to save the only life you could save. I like to add, determined to live the only life you could live, which is your life. I mean, so many people can live for lifetimes and they're living somebody else's life, the life that shows you on TV. Yeah, that's it's incredible. That's just one of the most incredible poems. You should know that, have that poem in your heart, because you don't just make this journey once. It's a very long, kind of circular or elliptical thing, and you just keep going back and forth, sort of like the symbol for eternity. You just keep, you make it many times during life, but gradually uh, you you shift your gravity from being in this armor of the childhood operating system, or even just living in the mind with no other part of you shift it to where you're actually living in the heart more of the time. And then you could use the mind, and then you use your instincts, but the heart sort of integrates it all. Yeah. Here's another one that you probably know, but it needs to be read into the record today. This is another heroic poem. Starts out, it's about questions, which is what we've been talking about lately, how you find these um, living koans, these questions that are worth following like a star. And in the summer days, she says, who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms, thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and flies away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention. Remember, that's our first thing. Pay attention, be astonished, tell somebody. It says, I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down in the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. It's what she did all day, every day, pretty much for her whole life. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? And then here's the koan, really. This is, I call it the Oliver koan, Mary's koan. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I remember reciting this for junior high kids. And I said, you can't ask this question too soon, kids. This is, a lot of people would think her life amounted to nothing. She just went walking around looking at grasshoppers. I mean, you read the corpus of her work, and the black snake, the locust. She just was paid attention to the natural world. That was her home base. She writes very few poems that have people in them, and very few poems that are domestic in a house. Yeah, she lived in the earth household, as the Native Americans called it. Yeah, amazing. So I don't know what prayer is, but I do know how to pay attention. That is prayer. If you remember we had some conversations one time, 2 or 3 things where we're talking about Simone Weil, the another hero, raised Jewish, became an atheist, then became a Catholic, and all along she said that prayer is attention. Love is attention. If you love somebody, you pay attention to them, a certain kind of attention that is a kind of wholehearted stream of love, really. Not easy to do. I fail at it all the time. But attention is prayer, attention is love. And so when we go down, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back to do another deep dive inside. Merton said one time, he said, it's during the time of the space race, he says, what will it mean if we travel from the Earth to the moon, if we don't cross this abyss between uh, ourselves and our true self, this abyss, this again, abyss is this deep, dark, we're the bottomless lake, So what does it mean if we travel to the moon if we can't even cross the abyss that separates us from our true self? And, he was talking about what I call becoming an intronaut, you know. Astronauts are people sail through the stars. Well, an intronaut is somebody who sails inward to cross that abyss. And then, that stands between us and our true selves. The true selves, it doesn't mean this is false. It just means it's incomplete. It just means we have all, missing parts here. And will we ever feel like we belong as long as there's part of us that's missing? Probably not. So this is a long journey. And it's a hero's journey to go inside. And meditation is that vehicle. And how many people are doing that today in the world? One doesn't know. How many people are doing it in your family or in your neighborhood? Probably not many. That's what Merton was talking to the other heroes. Merton was a contemplative hero. That's why people are still reading him. He wasn't churchy. Didn't try to sell anybody on one religion. He just was selling. It was all about the journey of the soul. Yeah, yeah. What is it you plan to do with this one wild, precious life? And the fact that she said this life is wild means it's natural, means it's like it's meant to grow and expand. Just like when we leave stuff alone, it recovers. We have to learn how to leave the planet alone. Well, how can we learn that when we haven't learned to leave ourselves alone? And that's also what we're doing when we're sitting in meditation. We're not messing with ourselves. We stop trying to prune ourselves and mow the grass of ourselves. We're letting ourselves grow naturally, you see. And it takes silence, it takes stillness, it takes the discipline to check in every day. Another great contemplative hero, Hafez, who's 14th century Sufi, he says, take a few minutes. It only takes a minute to stop and kiss the beloved before you go into the day. Rumi says, today, like every other day, you wake up empty and afraid. Don't rush to the office and begin working. Instead, take down a musical instrument. Make what you love be what you do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. The great permission, there's not just one way, because we're all so unique. But he says there's hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Well, find one of them. Start the day that way. How many people do not? Most Americans start the day hitting the off thing on the alarm and saying the great American mantra, shit. I gotta get up. I gotta go to work. And also what happens, and this is, there's the last thing in terms of where the hero journey comes into play is, we're a workaholic culture. We're founded by guys who thought work would set you free, et cetera. That's, by the way, that's what the Germans put over the death camps. Work will set you free. But, human beings need work. And, you need a job to keep the roof over your head. So you have a job. A bigger thing would be to have a career. A bigger thing would be to have a career that does some good. But then when all that ends and you retire in our culture, then what? Well, there's a bigger thing that doesn't have an end to it, and that's your vocation. We use that word, we've dumbed it down to mean, oh, you're no good with books and reading and writing, so go to vocational school. No, vocation's your calling. Voca means the word, and so you're called to something much bigger than a job, much bigger than a career. That's the ultimate vocation of to become who you're meant to be. What will you do with this one wild and precious life when you retire? That's a stumbling block for a lot of you. These are people I work with, people like ancient people like me. But it's it's just exciting when you realize, no, there's something bigger when all that's over. And maybe that's how we have to go through that until we get to a bigger ball game, which is to become who you're meant to be. That's your vocation, you see, however you do it. Well, all right, that's pretty good for now. We'll come back in 15 minutes and we'll dive into that dark lake. Yeah. Okay. See you then.